Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Supercars. Of course, this is the Bend Debrief, or the OTR Super Sprint Debrief, as this past weekend was in fact the OTR Super Sprint. But before we get into the weekend, let's just run over some news that have happened since the weekend. And I know it's only Tuesday, but there's been a couple big news to come. So starting off with the big one, David Reynolds was announced to leave Penrite at the end of this year, and he will be replaced by Richie Stanaway. Now it's unclear where Reynolds will end up next year, but it is highly speculated that he will end up in Scott Pye's seat at Team 18. Nick Percat has also been announced that he'll be leaving the Walkinshaw Andretti United at the end of the year, although his replacement is also yet to be confirmed. I'll say that happened later in the week, so stay tuned for that. I reckon it could either be Fabian Coulthard or even Ryan Wood. In terms of Percat, if he gets a seat, I can see him taking Jack LeBrock's seat at MSR. I reckon that'll be a good fit for him. He's had a rough season. He hasn't performed as well as Chaz, but I can't forget that podium him and Chaz had last year in Adelaide. It was so iconic. So I'll hate to see him go, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But the next news is Supercars announced the other day, or Monday, that New Zealand will be returning to the calendar from next year. The Supercars Championship will be going to the Topor International Circuit. They're going to be there from 2024 up until 2026. So that's amazing, and I'm so happy to have New Zealand back on the calendar. And finally, just a little one. There was a parity test Monday, I believe, at the Bend post-weekend. Just a little aero test with Fords running new end plates. There was Cam Waters' car and I think Di Pasquale's car as well as 888 as well. So, but there's been very little information regarding that. You can check out Speed Cafe if you want to read more onto that. But it'll be highly unlikely. I think it's unlikely the changes will come into effect at Sandown. But like I said, very little news to come from that. So without further ado, let's get straight into the OTR Super Sprint debrief. So it was a hectic weekend, but it was also quiet at the same time. It wasn't too much racing happening. There was a few crazy moments. Both first two races had some first lap incidents. The third race was actually more tame, if anything. Tyre wear was relatively okay. Though I don't think there was too much chat regarding that. Although it wasn't ideal, but the Bend is known for having low tyre deg. But it was a very, very, very perfect weekend for Brody. He managed to get 2 poles and 3 wins. He was basically unstoppable all weekend. The only thing he didn't top was the 2 practice sessions. He was just on fire this whole weekend. He was on a whole nother level. However, for Will Brown, not so much. He had a bit of an average weekend. He actually didn't finish the first race. He didn't even make it past the first corner. The first 2 corners. On race 1 after being spun around and caught in the collision by Jack LeBrock, which actually I think crashed out Jack Smith as well. And I think there was another one, but I can't put my finger on it. But Will Brown definitely, he crashed out of that one. And then after that, his weekend, he just didn't have a good weekend. He finished 13th in both the 2 races to come. which unfortunately, because of this whole weekend, he's actually lost some championship points and has dropped down to 4th, which is unfortunate, but I'm sure he can bounce back and he'll be ready for Sandown in a few weeks' time. Speaking of average, it was an average weekend for Red Bull. Gisbergen was still suffering from steering issues, which he's been suffering from for a while now. I didn't read it into it, but I read a headline saying that Gisbergen actually ran out of steering racks come Sunday. So he just hasn't been happy at all with the car. Although in saying that, he's been able to finish a consistent 5th and is now 2nd in the championship because of that and because of the problem with the wheel. Brock Feeney, it was an okay weekend for him, an unfortunate one on Sunday. He managed to finish 6th, 9th, and then last after being punted off the track by David Reynolds, who ended up getting a 15-second penalty as consequence. But unfortunately, it brought Feeney all the way down to the very bottom. That's the problem with the short races is, you know, you can lose so much time over a little incident like that. But the team also actually got into a bit of drama with the stewards on Sunday with not only did they lose points with Feeney dropping to last, but they also lost some team points with Shane van Gisbergen. During the pit stop on the last race, the car was dropped while the wheel gun was going. And unfortunately, they got a slap on the wrist, lost 30 team points, and was also fined. So Shane van Gisbergen, nothing bad happened here. He wasn't penalised in any way. It was just all purely team. Speaking of Reynolds, though, let's have a quick brief talk about Grove Racing. They had a positive weekend. They had a bit more pace this weekend. Payne was fighting for 4th majority of the time. Reynolds was when Feeney and Reynolds came together on the final lap. Reynolds was fighting, I think, for 4th, which is a shame. So he had a good, but besides from that, they had a good weekend, and it's a shame to see him leaving Grove, but it is what it is. Walkinshaw and Andretti United, it was an up and down weekend for them. But despite anything, they were insane on the starts. They were literally a bullet. I'm pretty sure it was one of those Japanese bullet trains. That's how good they were. There was like no wheel spin whatsoever. Chaz got a great blinding start on the first race, and Nick just went to town on the third race. Just almost, if the track was 100 meters further or longer, I reckon Nick would have led from turn 1, but Brody took that from him. But he had a blinding start. They're both rocket ships. They've probably got launch control. That's how good they were. But unfortunately, despite having an incredible start, the races weren't as great. Although Chaz, though, he was quite aggressive this weekend. He drove quite well. Managed to finish 2nd, 3rd, and 9th. Whereas Nick, not so much. He finished 18th, 12th. However, he did finish a 4th on Sunday, on the final race on Sunday, which was great. That was when he had that blinding start. But as I said before, Mostert was a bit aggressive this weekend. He got into a bit of a pickle with Thomas Randall. I think the first race, squeezing him a little wide. I think, to be fair though, Mostert tried to fix himself up, but in consequence, Randall went a little wide. But also, he got in a bit of another pickle with Brock Feeney on the final race on the main straight. He swerved. He led him into the grass, which was a bit cheeky from him. And he got a bad sportsmanship flag for driver conduct. No penalty was given. Speaking of Thomas Randall, a great weekend from Tickford. They had great form all weekend. They managed to get a podium in every race, which is, well, they really needed that, and it was really well deserved. Courtney, he had a crash on practice 1, but Tickford were able to bounce back with Thomas Randall. He managed to get his first pole position in the Supercars, and his first podium on his own in the main game as well. But not only that, he got a podium in every single race. He managed to finish third, second, and third. He looked fast, man. He looked really, really good. He should be pleased with that. And probably they will be pretty confident with coming into Sandown, I reckon, after having a great form this weekend. I know it's a different track, but living on a high, managed to get podiums every race. You're going to be high, ready to go. So looking forward to see what they can do in Sandown. Cameron Waters, he also had a good weekend. Finished fourth in the first race. Unfortunately, he got caught in a Jack LeBrock debacle on the second race, or the first race on the Sunday, and unfortunately finished 24th after being in the garage for the majority of that race. What happened was LeBrock it was the same corner too. So it wasn't, no. You know how I mentioned turn 2 before? No, it wasn't. It was a bit further on, turn 7, turn 6 maybe, around there. It was that left hook turn. Jack Block basically just locked up, went too hot into the corner, spun Cam around and spun Di Pasquale around too, which unfortunately ruined the day for... Oh, sorry, not just Di Pasquale, Davison, which ruined the day for both of them. But on the final race, though, Cam Waters managed to come home in second, and Tickford managed to get 2 podiums on that last race, which was great. Now, speaking of DJR, it was a bit of an average weekend for them, unfortunately. As I mentioned, Will was spun around, but in the first race, it was a bit average. Anton finished 11th, 7th, and Will Davison 9th, 22nd on that race he was spun on. But he managed to finish 6th on Sunday. So, obviously not where they want to be, especially after getting a bit better since Darwin. They'll have a lot of work to do come Sandown. So now let's have a look at the results. Well, the top 5 for each race. So race 20, which was on the Saturday, Brody Kostecki won, followed by Chaz Mostert and Thomas Randall rounding up the top 3, followed by Cam Waters and then Shane Van Gisbergen. Race 21, there were Brody Kostecki once again. It's literally the same. Top 3 is literally the same, just Thomas and Chaz swapped around. So Thomas finished 2nd place with Chaz rounding off the podium. And then David Reynolds, 4th place. Great work from him. And 5th, Shane Van Gisbergen once again. And then, of course, race 22. You guessed it, Brody Kostecki once again, followed by Cam Waters and Thomas Randall. I ticked for 2-3. And then Nick Percat bring home in 4th, and Shane Van Gisbergen once again in 5th. So we're very, very consistent by Gizzy and Brody. Now we're going to have a quick look at the championship standings post the Bend. Look at the top 10. So Brody maintains his lead from Shane Van Gisbergen now, which is a 137 point gap between the two. Then followed by Brock Feeney and then Will Brown, who I mentioned before, dropped down from 2nd to 4th after that Saturday incident. Then 5th, Chaz Mostert. 6th, Cam Waters. 7th is Andre Heimgartner. 8th is Jack LeBrock. 9th is Bryce Forward. And rounding off the top 10 is Will Davison. DJR still have a bit more work to do. With especially Anton in 12th there. They're hoping for a better result at Sandown. A quick look at the top 3 for the team's championship. We've got Coca-Cola racing by Erebus leading the way once again. Then Red Bull is 2nd, and then Brad Jones Racing is actually 3rd place ahead of Tickford. So that was overall pretty decent weekend. I was lucky enough to attend the Sunday, and I gotta admit that was my first time going there in full force. I actually did go in 2020 when they did the COVID round, where they did like a last minute thing. It wasn't much much there that weekend, whereas this weekend it was my first time experiencing it in full. And got to say, I was rather impressed. Not only by the Welcome Centre, there's so many beautiful cars there, as I mentioned in my TikTok. It was really amazing, actually. And I only had general admission, but you could access so much. Like the paddock, the supercar paddock was free. I was able to stand pretty close to the track. You could easily see screens. And I've got a son. There was lots to do with the kids as well, which was awesome. So, Shahins, great work. You did good. Keep up the good work, I suppose, with the Ben. Now let's just go through my driver of the weekend. So, I was very conflicted with this. I was very tempted to give it to Brody Kostecki after his amazing performance this weekend, but I'm going to have to give it to Tom Randall. After scoring his first podiums and then being able to maintain that form onto the rest of the weekend to get 2 more podiums. Really happy for him. He's a fantastic bloke, and I can't wait to see how he goes in Sandown. I hope it's not a fluke. I hope Tickford can actually keep the momentum going, because the more the merrier, basically. But let me know if you are satisfied with the results, if you wanted to see someone else win or whatnot, yada yada yada. Let me know in the comments, or hit me up on TikTok and Instagram. Let's talk motorsport. That's where I'm active majority of the time, and that's where you will see shorts of news that probably aren't worthy of making videos on YouTube about. But so keep an eye on that. Now, next off is the Enduro event. So we've got about 4 weeks until Sandown is on. During that 4-week period, though, what I'm thinking of doing is maybe next week or sometime later in the week, see how we go, is I'm going to have a quick run through of the 2024 driver lineup. I just want to wait a few more days until see if there's any more announcements before I do that, because silly season is in complete swing this year. But then I also want to do a enduro preview where I run through all the driver lineups for the enduros this year, and just give a quick rundown on that. So stay tuned for both my YouTube, my Spotify, and my TikTok and Instagram, like I mentioned before. So that's all from me. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.